Hi, I'm Lexi, and I'm here with Miss Witham to talk about some art concepts.
We're going to talk about abstract expressionism, surrealism, and Dadaism, and some of the artists behind those movements.
Miss Witham, can you start us off with some abstract expressionism?
Yes, so one of my favorite artists for abstract expressionism is Jackson Pollock. He did mostly around 1948. He did these giant splatter paintings that was like massive, as big as a whole lobby in a hotel almost. And he would just walk throughout his paintings. A lot of his expressionism was involving himself heavily into his art. So he was a very heavy chain smoker, and as he was walking around his paintings, his cigarette ashes would actually fall onto the paintings, and that would be part of his art. One of my favorite stories about Jackson Pollock is he had his house keys on his belt, and as he was walking around doing his art, it actually fell off, and he decided to leave it, and he had to get a new set of car keys, I'm sure, and house keys, but it was a lot of involving himself in his art, that catharticism of putting himself almost literally into his artworks. There's a lot of them where his fingerprints are actually in the artworks, and those sell for a lot of money.
Are his fingerprints in that one?
I believe so, yeah. I think that there's some here in these white areas.
Really?
Uh-huh. It's easier to see in person.
Oh, okay. Can you tell me about Robert Motherwell?
Robert Motherwell. Well, he was big into emotionless, which is pretty opposite for expressionism, but that was part of it. It was that absence of emotion was a big piece of his artwork.
Would you mind starting us to surrealism?
Absolutely. So Salvador Dali is one of my favorite artists when it comes to surrealism. This is one of his pieces, and it is called Persistence of Memory. He did a lot of paintings that involved dreams. He described his dreams as painting his memories. So that's why he has all these different clocks, because dreams are meant to be very sort of timeless and that loss of time. We see some mountains up here where it has mountains from California, and that's where he grew up. He loves symbolism in his pieces. So we have these ants here on this one and a fly here, and that's meant to represent decay and death, almost the death and loss of memories.
Can you tell me what this right here means?
His face? Yeah, so this is a very weird kind of side profile of his face, and it's very almost, it's very backroomsy. It's very almost unsettling, the way that this is depicted. And that was, again, meant to symbolize this sort of detached, surrealist sort of, this uncanniness that he wanted to depict.
It looks like a horse and a duck.
It does kind of look like a horse and a duck. If we turn this sideways, we can see the profile a bit more. You can see his eyelashes, his nose kind of coming down. It's a self-portrait, but it's meant to be very sort of not quite right.
No. It's like a fever dream.
It is, yeah. Well, that's what he was trying to depict. There's a mirror back here in the background, and that's meant to show that even though this is all kind of melting and it's all weird, that there's that mirroring of real life.
What about the water in the back?
The water in the back is meant to also be a form of reflection, and it's meant to also go along with these mountains of California where he grew up.
What about the stuff down here?
The stuff down here. So these are some more examples. So we have Max Ernst, one right here, and it's a rock that's floating in midair, and that could never happen in real life. So it's sort of, how do you even describe something like that?
It has a very uncanny feel to it.
It does. A lot of surrealism art is very almost disturbing to the eye, and it's meant to invoke that kind of emotion.
Gives me deja vu.
Deja vu?
Yeah. Can we... Alright. Could you start us off with Dada?
Absolutely. I love Dada. So this was popular art that happened around 1920. This is right after World War I. So a lot of artists were detached with the sense of what does art mean? Why should we even do art if something so horrific had just happened with this great war? So this was a sort of way to rebel against traditional art.
Could you tell us about the Mona Lisa down here?
Yes, so this Mona Lisa here, it looks just like the normal Mona Lisa, but that you can see that there's a mustache on it. And that was meant to be as a sort of mockery of art, putting a mustache on it and then calling it its own. And the question is that still a form of expressionism? Is that still a form of art? Just putting a mustache on a famous artwork?
Do you see Dada as a form of comedy?
I do, yes. One of my favorite stories is actually from Marcel Duchamp. He made this artwork. It was called a ready-made. A ready-made piece of artwork is basically this art that you could pick up at the hardware store or just purchase it, and it's pre-made. So he purchased a urinal, and he titled it Fountain. And he put this on display. There was this art exhibition in New York, and they said that they would accept any form of artwork anywhere because they were just trying to get artwork back into the social norm right after this big war, trying to re-amp art. And they put it on display, and it was behind this black curtain. And there was a display that said on the top, "Not for the fairer sex." And they put this display right up next to the restrooms. And you would go into this curtain, and sitting there would be this upside down urinal on a pedestal, and it was signed R. Mutt, which was a play on Mutt Iron Works, which was the manufacturer of the urinal. Women would go into this display, and they would faint because it was so obscene. How could I look at a urinal? That's not for me. How could I ever? That's terrible. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
So that's why Dada is definitely a form of comedy.
What do you portray Dada as?
I would portray Dada as a sort of rebellion, a sort of play on the expressionism, what does art mean? So I have the personal belief that anything can be art.
Do you think the banana being taped to the wall was a form of Dada?
I do, yes. That piece of artwork, the banana taped to the wall with duct tape, that is called Comedy, is the actual name of the piece. So I believe that that was a form of expression. Here we are talking about it, we're discussing it. I believe that that is what makes a piece of artwork. Does it invoke emotion or conversation, or does it make us think about something?
I mean, it does.
It does?
Yeah. I would say so.
You'd say so?
Yeah.
I agree.
Anyways, thank you for coming here with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
It was very nice to discuss these art concepts.
Mm-hmm.
All right.